Bluebell Hill in Kent, England, has long been a site of eerie occurrences and unexplained phenomena. The area is infamous for its ghost stories, particularly the tale of a phantom hitchhiker, a spectral figure said to haunt the road, appearing to drivers only to vanish without a trace. The most well-known encounter comes from the 70s, where Maurice Goodenough, a 35-year-old bricklayer from Chatham, ran into Rochester police station to tell them that he had just knocked down a little girl on Bluebell Hill. Maurice was driving along the A229 on July the 13th of 1974. It was an overcast night with a persistent, heavy rain that made for unpleasant driving conditions. The dual carriageway was only very dimly lit, and the high tree line bordering the road only added to the overall sense of gloom and darkness. The white lines of the road became hypnotising. The glare of the headlights from the cars travelling towards him was intense and unrelenting, and shortly after midnight, Maurice turned on his high beams along a particularly dark section of road when all of a sudden he was confronted with the sight of a little girl, her white clothing glowing in the blazing headlights, inches away from her. Maurice braked hard, but it was too late. He struck the girl. He ran her down. The impact was real. He felt the thud resonate through the vehicle. Shaken, Maurice screeched to a halt and rushed out of the car, assuming the worst. There, lying on the road, was the girl. She looked about 10 years old almost, and had shoulder-length hair, and was dressed in a white, lacy blouse, a skirt, and ankle socks. Her face was marked with a gash, and her knees were bloodied. She did not move. In a panic, he covered her up with a tartan rug from his car and attempted to flag down several other motorists, but none of them would stop. There was no phone box nearby. He sped to the nearest police station in Rochester, desperate for assistance. He told them that he hadn't put the girl into his care because he didn't know how severe her injuries might have been. The police accompanied him back to the scene, and what they found is what changes this tale from a mere accident to a ghost story. The girl had vanished. The tartan rug was still there, but there was no sign of the injured girl. No blood, no evidence of an accident. Both sides of the steeply wooded hill were searched, but the heavy rain hampered progress somewhat. Tracker dogs were brought in to search, but nothing was found. There were no apparent tracks in the ground. Nobody matching the girl's description had been admitted to any hospital. There were no marks on Maurice's car either. This event was not an isolated incident. It was part of a larger thread of strange occurrences on Bluebell Hill. Many drivers have reported weird experiences during the 70s on the A229. There's a story about a woman from Kent who picked up a female hitchhiker, but soon afterwards she felt a terrible sense of dread. As she glanced at her new passenger in the back seat, she noticed that whoever she had picked up seemed to be gradually changing in appearance. The passenger seemed to have grown a little larger and now appeared to have extremely hairy arms. The driver made an excuse to stop and somehow persuaded the traveller to get out of the car, and the driver then sped off at high speed, and when she arrived home, she discovered there was an axe in the back seat. Two men driving home to Maidstone stopped at the side of the A229 to give a rain-soaked girl a lift. She gave her name and address, and they dutifully drove her all the way home, and when they arrived, they discovered that the back seat was completely empty. Concerned for the girl's safety, the men knocked on the door to explain to the occupants of the house that they had picked up a girl and she had given this address, but must have jumped out of the car at some point without them noticing. The man who answered the door just gave a weary nod, and he said, "It's okay. This happens a lot. I think it's the ghost of a girl who used to live here." Many motorists and motorcyclists over the years have reported a similar instance of picking up such a young hitchhiker, only to find that she's disappeared by the time they get her home. Then, in the 90s, 1992, Ian Sharp of Maidstone had a terrifying moment when a ghostly girl appeared in front of his car out of nowhere. She seemed to be running towards him and looked him dead in the eyes before colliding with the vehicle and falling underneath it. Ian skidded to a stop and dived out of the car to assess the terrible outcome. Pausing to take a breath and to steady himself, the abject fear that he felt almost got the better of him, but he was able to cautiously kneel down and take a look beneath the car. And there was nothing. He searched nearby bushes in a blind panic, convinced that he'd struck and killed a human being. Upon reporting it to the police, he found that they did believe him, and they appraised him of the tale of the phantom hitchhiker. The police then conducted a search, and again there was no trace of any body, no blood, no damage to the car, and no admissions to any hospitals. Ian is adamant that he saw the girl and that she looked 100% human and not like a ghost at all.
I've had an accident. I think I've just hit someone. A young girl.
Sir, have you called an ambulance?
I thought the lady must see me coming down the hill, and as I got close to her, she just ran straight in front of the motor car.
Just here, right here. She's going to be here somewhere. She must be.
We just had to write it off as another sighting of the Bluebell Hill ghost.
This was a real lady, real flesh and blood. But there's got to be some kind of answer to what that was at the time.
2 weeks later, 19-year-old Chris Dawkins was travelling home after a day at the racing at Brands Hatch. A young woman in white, wearing a red scarf, darted out from between parked cars and fell beneath the wheels of Chris's vehicle.
There was no way someone like that could have gone out and run off.
Hello, Dad? No.
He drove to a nearby phone box and called his father in a panic. His father drove out to meet him at the scene and conducted his own search of the immediate area. Again, nothing was found. The police also searched the area, and yet again there were no marks on the car, no signs of an accident, no blood, and no body.
I was trying to get him to calm down for a few brief seconds to understand basically where and what had happened.
She's got to be under the car. I mean, I've looked for her everywhere. I can't find her. She's got to be under the car.
All right, son, all right. Just try and relax, OK?
Will you look under the car and see if she's there?
I don't think you hit anyone, Chris.
I saw her so clearly, you know.
The ghost of Bluebell Hill story has been going on for a number of years, ever since I've been a police officer, which is going on for 18 years. And we'd had an incident a few weeks beforehand involving a coach driver on the main A229, and we could only think that Chris had possibly seen something of a similar nature.
The area of Bluebell Hill is covered in burial chambers dotted along a Stone Age pathway that crosses the A229. There's a Roman road that runs parallel to that as well. There is also nearby Kit's Coty, one of a group of ancient stones that rivalled Stonehenge in their importance and supposedly was the site of many ancient battles. Of course, such megaliths are often placed along ley lines, which some say channel the energies of the earth. Ley lines are hypothetical alignments of geographical and historical sites, such as ancient monuments, megaliths, and natural landforms. The concept was popularised by Alfred Watkins in the 1920s, who proposed that these alignments were the result of deliberate ancient trackways created for practical or spiritual purposes. Watkins suggested that these lines connected important landmarks and were used for navigation or as part of a broader spiritual landscape. Proponents of the ley line theory often attribute various supernatural and paranormal phenomena to these particular alignments. The belief is that these lines channel spiritual or earth energies which can influence human consciousness, amplify psychic abilities, or serve as conduits for supernatural occurrences. Some common claims of this theory are that areas along ley lines have higher incidences of ghost sightings and UFO encounters and that kind of thing. People who visit these sites sometimes report heightened psychic sensitivity or weird feelings. Ley lines are supposed to intersect with places of historical and mythical importance. There's also a theory that suggests that some areas, such as those with prehistoric stone structures, can somehow carry and record electrical energy. And this particular area also has several pylons now running through it, and was actually in close proximity to TV masts serving the area at the time. Is this combination of electricity and energy causing some sort of perfect storm for such sightings? Do such areas have a higher capacity to support the stone tape theory, which is that a physical environment, especially comprised of material such as stone, can absorb the energy of human emotions or actions. This concept's often linked to locations with a long history of human activity where significant events have occurred. These recordings can then be triggered by certain stimuli, such as certain atmospheric conditions, electrical activity, or the presence of a particularly sensitive person. And when triggered, these stored events are essentially replayed, which cause people to witness what appear to be ghosts, or residual hauntings. Places like Avebury, known for its large stone circle and other Neolithic structures, or the Tower of London, with its long and often violent history, or Glastonbury Tor, another location steeped in legend and mysticism. The Rollright Stones in Oxfordshire, a group of megalithic monuments linked to numerous legends and ghost stories. Edinburgh Castle, in fact, perched on an ancient volcanic rock, has a long history of warfare, imprisonment and execution, reputedly one of the most haunted places in Scotland. The stone tape theory suggests that all of these places might store energy from the past and occasionally replay them under the right conditions. So who might this apparition be that is seemingly locked in this perpetual cycle of being run down on the A229? Well, already the descriptions offered by Maurice, Chris and Ian, whilst similar, do differ, particularly in terms of what the girl was wearing. In interviews, Ian refers to the person that he saw as a lady.
The lady ran in front of the car. All I could think of was this lady under the car.
And Chris refers to the entity as a girl.
The girl ran out and sort of semi-turned towards me as I hit her.
And Chris refers to the apparition as a young woman in newspaper articles from the time, whereas Maurice claimed to have seen someone who was roughly 10 years old. There was a fatal crash that happened in 1965 in which a 22-year-old Australian girl named Susan had been celebrating at a hen party ahead of her planned marriage to an RAF technician named Brian. The two had met when Brian was stationed in Australia and Sue came to England for the wedding. When driving home from the hen party, the girl's car collided with a Jaguar car on the A229. Two of the girls in the car, Patricia and Judith, were killed. Susan ended up in hospital in a critical condition. She would later die. A fourth person named Gillian was extremely badly injured, and the driver of the Jaguar suffered minor injuries and his passenger had to go to hospital. In later years, the press, along with some misremembered or misreported articles, attempted to link Judith in particular to the tales of the encounter with the phantom hitchhiker. The Kentish Express states that ever since the crash, people have started seeing the ghost. The publication even went as far as interviewing the girl's father, in what I must say is a grossly unethical and insensitive thing to do, in order to ask him what he thought about his daughter haunting the roads. Why on earth would they do this? It's beyond me. Poor guy's wife had also just died very recently, and they printed that fact too. I find this entire article to have been in extremely poor taste. We can touch on this briefly, however, to say, well, why would a ghost be seen running along the road? And why would it be seen standing up at all if it was the ghost of someone who was killed while sitting down inside a car? The earliest widely reported encounter with the Bluebell Hill ghost dates back to 1968, actually. The story first gained attention through an article in the local newspaper, the Maidstone Gazette. It was published on September 10th. This article described sightings of a mysterious girl seen hitchhiking, specifically, near the Lower Bell pub on Bluebell Hill. Motorists who picked her up reported that she would vanish from their cars without explanation. Admittedly, it's hard to find anything prior to the reported crash that mentions a phantom hitchhiker, but a person who passed away in a crash should surely not present as a ghost of a hitchhiker. Bluebell Hill has also been the site of many other fatal accidents over the years, so why this crash, why Judith, and why assign her name to these stories some 9 years after the fact? And what about the other 2 girls? Why isn't the spectre said to be one of them? Well, if we go back to the Maurice Goodenough story in which he ran into Rochester police station, we might find a clue here. Because be it subconsciously or otherwise, it seems that the reporter who spoke to Judith's father had linked the fact that Judith lived in Rochester with the Goodenough story having taken place close by to Rochester. I can't see any reason why this young woman's name should be associated with this story, and I can't see how Mr. Goodenough's description of a girl of around 10 years of age fits with a 22-year-old being the source of the haunting. It does raise one tantalising yet entirely speculative thread, however. What if the approximately 10-year-old ghost in Maurice Goodenough's encounter is someone who did die in that same crash, but hadn't yet been born? Maurice had his encounter in 74, the crash happened in 65, that's almost 10 years. The fact is, we'll never know, will we? We'll never know if these people truly saw something at all, we'll never know what it was that they saw, and we'll never know the source of the hauntings or replays as they might be considered. Could be an echo from the Roman days, or from further back into history, or even into prehistory.
In 1965 there was a crash in this area where 3 girls were killed, and the local papers have tried to link what these gentlemen have seen with that. Do you think they've seen a ghost?
There are clear similarities in their stories, and these are quite impressive, but they don't seem to be related to that crash because the girls were all in the cars, they weren't crossing the road. All they have in common here is Bluebell Hill. I think we should look at Bluebell Hill quite closely, because if we can see that map again, I'll show you what I mean. Within 300 feet of Kidd's Coty, I find that interesting, if not significant.
I'm more interested in the modern things here, the electricity pylons, the masts there. And oddly enough, these events started very soon after those television masts were first turned on.
Maybe there's something these 2 gentlemen do have in common that we don't know about, that made them see exactly the same hallucination.
If I had hallucinations, I couldn't be a coach driver.
Well, the answer lies somewhere in Bluebell Hill. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed.
What do you think? You let me know in the comments below. Hit the like button please, it's the thumbs up button in the corner there. Share this video with your friends and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so, and all that good YouTube stuff. Bye for now.